Very good. Pass to the other team. Something your right hand's touching. Read it out loud. Title of A Christmas Carol. 10, 9.
Sorry. The angels did say, let's do certain portion.
Okay. Blah, blah, blah still works. You have to, I didn't say you had to sing the correct notes. I did say you had to sing along.
Okay.
Right? So, and that's important because you guys hear like, la, la, da, 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 da. Okay, the important part is not that it's beautiful or accurate, it's that they're involved.
Who offered water?
Starts with what? I did. I'll get one for you. Okay.
You know I love you. I'll always be true. So please love me. Olivia, come on and join a team. You guys join one side or the other. You'll get this, it's easy.
A song with some type of water in it. All right. Baby.
Oh,
Look, it's ice, baby. Maybe children with the ice baby.
No, really? That was good.
Right hand. Right hand.
Song title that includes one of the seasons.
Summertime. And the living is easy.
Pass it along. 10.
Song, blue, everybody knows one.
Pass it along.
A song with a man's name in it.
10.
Johnny Angel, I don't know the
Well, we'll get to it. Okay.
Johnny.
So what you just got there was just a little icebreaker that I do very early on in almost all of my classes, choir, modern band, etc. Just called song ball. And these kids love it. I have kids the first couple weeks of school before we really started in on rep to like, can we play the song ball game again? Okay. It's really fun. There's lots of different things. Like I said, this came from Music in Motion. You can probably find it a couple of other places. But if you're interested in this, I'd pick one up by your TMEA. It's a good call. So you can go back to wherever your normal spots are, but stay standing. The idea is that we're trying to get the kids that are maybe a little reluctant, a little reticent. We're trying to get the kids who wouldn't normally jump out and volunteer for a solo or volunteer to sing for the band to kind of loosen some of that and to reduce that anxiety. If you think about the way LKR is structured, then a lot of the way they introduce concepts is in a no-fail situation. If it's like, now it's your time, we're going to sing the song. Today's song is Bohemian Rhapsody. Okay, so, all right, who's going to be the soloist today? You're setting up your kids for failure. But if you're starting them with a little bit of song ball, then you're setting them up for success because you're in essentially, the only way you can fail is by not participating. As long as you're participating, didn't have to be accurate, didn't have to do the right words, but you had to do something. So keep that in mind. Tone and accuracy we'll get to later. Okay, so we give our instrumentalists a chance to warm up, and usually when it's like, okay, guitars, we finally got it correct. Okay, basses, we're in tune, drummer, listen to that metronome. All right, singers, get up there and sing. Okay, and we tend to neglect them, and they're probably the ones that need the warm up the most. So most rock and pop singers will go back to a classical background when they warm up. So I'd recommend warming up in a classical manner. So what that means, just really, really simplified, is that their feet should be about shoulder width apart. Their knees should be slightly bent because you don't want to lock your knees and increase all of this tension, restrict blood flow, oxygen, and stuff like that. That can actually cause people to pass out sometimes. We really don't like that. That's extra paperwork. So then your knees are slightly bent. Your sternum, right here, which is the bone that connects your rib cage, is raised up. I teach my children the term sternum really early because it avoids me saying chest and for some kids, that's a problem when I'm referring, exactly, right? So I actually never use that term, especially with my beginners. I say, your sternum is the bone that connects your collarbone to your rib cage, and it's right here in the center. And when you're singing, you raise your sternum up and you open your rib cage. I'm using accurate, professional terminology, and I'm directing them away from any sort of body consciousness thing like that. I'll also usually refer to air flowing down instead of talking about your tummy or your belly, because there's some sort of body anxiety about that as well. So when we stand, it's feet shoulder width apart, knees slightly bent, sternum up. Your shoulders and your arms just relax at your side. What this does is it lets your rib cage be open, and it lets your rib cage be raised up and expanded. You want this to be a conduit for your air. So when you breathe in, nothing up here has to move. So watch me, I'm going to exhale. I'm going to inhale. Notice none of this move. Too often we try to, but if you watch an infant breathe, babies know how to breathe. We are all born breathing diaphragmatically, which means that your diaphragm goes up and down and your collarbone doesn't. The fancy term, clavicular breathing and diaphragmatic breathing. We learn the wrong way to breathe somewhere in life when we learn the same place to suck it in and hide ourselves. So we got to untrain that, and we've got to go back to breathing the right way. So if you stand tall and you breathe in, this should expand outward this way, this should expand outward this way, and it should expand outward this way. So take a hand and put it right here, between your navel and your sternum. Right here is where your rib cage expands. You want it right there so it's not touching any bones. Breathe out and empty all of your air out. Now inhale as if you're sipping through a straw. If you felt your collarbone or your shoulders rise, if you felt an increase in tension here, that means this was too low and your body's trying to tell you that. So then raise this up. Exhale again. You'll feel this move inward like a balloon deflating. And then inhale and you feel this expand. And then out again. When you breathe out, your belly goes in. When you breathe in, your belly goes out. And I breathe in sipping through a straw because that's going to relax the throat. The most relaxed vowel shape is the oo vowel. It purses the lips forward and it opens up the back of the throat, which is something that's going to be very, very beneficial to them. Your singers are probably going to want to sing on things like ah, and ah is probably the most tense vowel possible. So I'll never, ever, ever warm my singers up on an ah at the very beginning. I'll always start with the vowel that's more placed in the back, and it opens up the throat. So quick terminology lesson. It's your call whether you use this with your students or not, but it's good for you to know. You can sit for a second while we talk. Normally my singers will stand pretty much the entire time, and I train them for that because no one performs on stage sitting down. Unless you're the drummer or maybe the keyboardist, but the singer's never going to sit. So just so you know, framework of the voice, like I said, depending on your kids, you may or may not use these terms. So your jaw has muscles right here, and these muscles should be relaxed. That's one way to open up a vowel. Okay? Your vocal cords or your voice box, which is called your larynx, is right here. You may have heard it referred to you as your Adam's apple. Everybody's got one. Everybody's got one. Ladies, you have one too. The reason that we don't see it is that your vocal cords are smaller. That's the same reason that your voice is higher. The reason your vocal cords, and the reason that we don't see it is those smaller vocal cords, they're placed this way in your throat, are farther back. Also, you have some more soft tissue here. That's what makes you soft. Okay? And so, notice I didn't say any other words there, just soft. Okay? So that's why we get the protrusion right here for guys and not for girls. But everyone has it. And if you're not sure where yours is, put your hand on your throat right here, and then just say your name. And you'll feel it. If you still can't find it, then swallow with your hand here. You feel it pop up and down. Okay? Now, with your hand there, go ahead and yawn. What happened when you yawned? Could anyone tell? It lowered. Absolutely, which is why when you relax, you sound like this. That's really beneficial for your singers because one of the things that they're going to tend toward is a high larynx. Their larynx is going to creep up and up and up and up and up, and they're going to run out of room, and it's going to be really tense right here. They're going to have no room, And then they're going to try to feel like they need to give it more room, and they're going to do this, which makes it even worse, because that takes your vocal cords and stretches them out. Tension, tension, tension. Tension is our enemy. Anything from here to here that's tense is bad. This is tense and engaged, but this should be open and relaxed. So that's the second way to open up the vowels, by relaxing the throat. First way is dropping the jaw. Second way is opening and relaxing the throat. The third way is creating space in your mouth. Your soft palate is a voluntary muscle. It can be controlled at will. And if you're not sure where your soft palate is, you can take your tongue and touch your top front teeth and move your tongue back. You'll feel the bumpy part of your mouth. That's called your alveolar ridge. We can ignore that for now. Keep going back. Smooth, hard part. That's called your hard palate. We're almost there. Keep going back. Soft, squishy part. All right, above your tongue. That's the soft palate. And your soft palate, by default, is usually kind of low. It's just a relaxed muscle, and when it's relaxed, it's flabby and low. But we can raise our soft palate and create more space. So here's the difference it does to my sound. If I lower my soft palate all the way down until it's touching my tongue, then the air can't escape through my mouth, and the air has to escape through the only other opening in my face, which is my nose. If you have a singer that sounds like this, the reason they sound like this is their soft palate is too low. As I notice, I'm still dropping my jaw, and my throat is relaxed, but I'm getting this nasally sound. That's all having to do with the position of my soft palate. So as I raise my soft palate, I give my sound a different timbre, a different tone color, a greater depth, a greater resonance, and a greater power. This is with my soft palate raised all the way up. I've changed nothing else. I've not changed the position of my jaw, the position of my larynx, or the amount of air that I'm using. Yet I sound louder. I sound more powerful, more resonant, more authoritarian, more in control, more dramatic, and you're paying more attention to me now than you were a moment ago. Because of the position of my soft palate. In radio voice, in theatrical voice, they train for this position. Opera singers sing everything from this position because of the resonance it creates. Now you might be thinking rock and opera are different, but one thing that they have very, very much in common is forward frontal resonance. Not through the nose, but through the cavities in your skull. There are holes in your head right here. And by opening up my soft palate and letting more of the vibrations travel through the higher portion of my skull, I've created resonance chambers. I've essentially made the body of my instrument larger. I've turned a solid body into a hollow body, so it's more resonant here. So working with those three different things, I didn't sing a single note, but I can change the way my singer sounds. I can also help them sing with less laryngeal, larynx, and pharyngeal, pharynx, which is throat, tension, which is going to help them sing longer, higher, lower, faster, and better. It'll also be more fun. So keep that in mind. And the best exercises that I do are things that we've just done here. You yawn to relax the throat. You can practice breathing in through your nose. Close your eyes and think of something really pleasant, like your favorite food, your favorite scent. And feel that open up. And create more space right here. And that's going to help your singers a lot. Don't be afraid of them sounding too classical. You're not going to do it that well. They won't sound too classical. You'll get them started, and they'll move in that direction, and that's going to help them sound more present, more resonant, which is things that we definitely want. Rock singers especially have incredible resonance. It's very forward and bitey, and that's how it cuts through the mix of all the distortion and everything else. So that's going to help them out. So that's just space and breathing. And you can do that a couple of different ways. Go ahead and stand with me. We'll do some together. So we did a little breathing, okay? So another way to do it, I had you put a hand here. This time put hands here. Squishy part between your ribs and your hips. Breathe in. And breathe out. And breathe in. And breathe out. Yeah, don't be afraid of this pooching out. You're going to have a little air baby if you do it the right way. Okay, breathe in. And breathe out. Encourage your singers whenever they breathe to have that amount of space. Now for vowels, the way I introduce vowels and space to my singers is that there are two oohs in the world that you use right now already. You don't need to learn them, you already use them. One is the ooh that you say when you see someone who's about to get into a lot of trouble. And it sounds like? Ooh. Exactly, okay? You may not need to share this with the kids, but you and I now know that that means a high larynx, a low soft palate, a clenched in jaw, bad space, bad sound. They're getting in trouble, so are you, bad vowel, okay? The second one is the sound that you make when you see something that really impresses you. And it sounds like? Ooh. High soft palate, low larynx, relaxed jaw and relaxed throat. Good vowel. You're impressed, I'm impressed too. Okay? So if you show your singers that difference right there in 10 seconds, you can teach them the difference between good space and bad space. And depending on the age level of your singers and the amount of time that you have to devote to this, it's worth the time, by the way. Then that's going to drastically change the way that they sound. And from the ooh, you can go into all of the others. But I like starting with ooh because it has the most space in the back. So if you can get them the most space in the back, every other vowel is going to have a little bit less from there. So when I sing, I'm just going to pick a super simple, very limited range warm-up. I don't do, a 2-octave glissando or anything like that because they're not ready for it. So I'll start with 3 notes or 5 notes. Depending on the age of your singers and the development of their voice, just maybe most of them, especially if you're secondary, they have a little bit bigger range unless they're that boy going through the voice change and then they have 1 note and that's it. So have them do We Will Rock You because it's like, the verse is like a single note, okay? But then 5 notes is usually where we start. Now practice what you're about to teach, so stand tall, breathe deeply, and sing. And then I teach them a simple warm-up and I move that around to a variety of places depending on what we're working on. It's always better to start in the medium range and work down than to try to start at the basement and work your way up. Using an ascending warm-up at the bottom range is just going to take this gross bottom sound and move it up. Which brings me to my next thing. Just as instruments have registers and positions, so too does the voice. The voice has different compartments or registers, like gears on a car. And they're useful for different things. So what most of us speak in is our chest voice. It's low, it's relaxed, it's resonant, it takes very little air or energy to produce. Say, hey. 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 That's your chest voice. And so, but often when we sing, especially guys singing pop music, it's almost entirely in their head voice. Say, hey. Hey. So that's your head voice, right? So that's the separate compartment. In all of us, guys and girls, we have a chest voice and a head voice. And a great way to introduce this, I use this with my high schoolers, you can adapt however with your kids. But I say, you're at the mall or somewhere that you like to go, and you see a little kid, tears in their eyes, looking around, concerned, worried, clearly in distress. And you walk up to that little kid and you say, hey, where's your mommy and daddy? Do you want to come with me and we can go get some help? That's my head voice. If I used the wrong register, and I walked up and I said, hey, where's your mommy and daddy? You want to come with me and we can go get some help? No, stranger danger, right? Okay. Yeah. So very simply, that's the difference between the 2 registers. They're going to feel different, they're going to sound different. So hey, 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 hey. Also, most of the time when we scream or shout, we're using our head register as well. Now, guys have a much smaller head register, a much larger chest register. Ladies, it's reversed. Okay, smaller chest register, except for maybe some of my lowest altos, they might have a bigger chest range. Okay, and then a larger head voice. There's also something called falsetto, which is the woo, that range up in there. Ladies, you don't have a falsetto because your head voice is just naturally larger. It transitions beautifully from the bottom to the top without any extra register. Guys are going to have that shift from one to the other. And a lot of pop music is going to have a lot of the guys' part singing in falsetto. Justin Timberlake, Bruno Mars, Rascal Flatts, pretty much everything CeeLo Green sings is in falsetto, okay? So you're thinking about that, that's your upper range. And you are free to use warm-ups in any of those ranges. But my recommendation is you give them warm-ups in what you expect them to sing in. The range, the register, the tempo, the key, etc. Expose them to as much of that as possible. And really, really savvy directors are going to take warm-ups that match what you're doing in the music. So maybe, you know, the pattern in your music is, maybe that's the pattern. Well, that's a little minor pattern. So then my warm-up would be, you know, a big mistake that a lot of people make is like, let's warm up, okay? Now let's sing our song. Right? And there's no connection whatsoever with their kids. I'm not going to spend 3 hours teaching you all of my favorite warm-ups, but I will give you my 2 favorite books if you want to look into them, and feel free to jot these down if you want. One of them is The Perfect Blend by Timothy Seelig. And if you just search The Perfect Blend, Timothy, it doesn't matter if you misspell Seelig, you'll find it. And another one is the Choral Warm-Up Collection. Yes, I know it's not choir, but they're the people that spend all day singing, so we should probably listen to them because they probably know what they're doing.
The choral warm-up.
Choral Warm-Up Collection. I think there's a couple volumes. The one that I like is the one that's green. And I can't remember, I think it's the first volume, and it says like 370 warm-ups or some really large number. I like it because it's spiral bound. It sits flat on a music stand or a piano. The Perfect Blend is a regular book, so you've got to break the spine. And just because I'm the ridiculously pedantic person that I did, I scanned all of the warm-ups that I liked and printed them out and slapped them on index cards. And I've got an old school card catalog with all of my warm-ups separated by what they work on. Okay? So you can choose to be crazy like me, or you can just pick your favorites and jot a little bit down. But I would think of that as part of your preparation for that. We all know that the areas that we're weaker in are the areas that we're going to have to do more preparation work for. Rudy can win a lead guitar lesson. I cannot. I have to plan that out. Okay? So if singing is not your strength in your background, you may need to do a little more prep work for your singers, even if there's only a couple of them in each class, because otherwise they're going to fall through the cracks. So one of the best ways to maintain, I mentioned this a second ago, the health of your instrument for your singers, one of the best ways that you can do it is just set up a routine that they know how to stand, they know how to breathe, and you monitor that. They keep their throat and jaw relaxed, and that you warm them up before they sing. My really advanced singers in my rock band, I can go into the corner and warm up, because they're a 5th or 6th year choir student that's done vocal warm-ups every day since as long as they can remember. But my baby singers that are like, I took rock band because I want to play guitar, but maybe I want to sing this time. Can you help? I'm going to spend a lot of time going through it and teaching them these little patterns, teaching how to connect the ear to the voice, things like that. And that time is hard to get sometimes. And it may be 5 minutes at the beginning of class, 5 minutes at the end of class, so everyone's getting instruments out or putting instruments up. But make the time however you can.
Yeah, quick question.
Yeah.
How do you, for kids like 5th, 6th, 7th grade, their voices are changing? I mean, it's a whole different set of things, isn't it?
Yes and no. So yes, it's a different set of things, but the difference is essentially, you go to sleep at night, I come into your bedroom and I move everything 3 inches. Not all the same 3 inches. Everything moves 3 inches, but it's different directions for everything. You wake up the next morning, you don't turn the lights on, you go to walk around. You're gonna bump into some stuff and you're like, that's not where I left it. That's also not where I left it. That's also not. You know where things are more or less, but it's not exactly where you thought it would be. That's what a kid's changing voice is like. Their instrument all of a sudden just got recalibrated. It's like I have a student playing guitar and all of a sudden I give them a different scale fretboard and say, play your solo now. It's not where you thought it would be. It's still there, it's still in the right direction, it's still more or less where it should be, but it's not exactly where it should be. So that's where the changing voices. Now girls have a voice change too. It usually happens at the end of elementary school, beginning of middle school. You're going to start to hear your girls' voices change by first hearing a darker sound, a darker timbre, a little bit of a breathy quality, a little more of a husky sound. That's your key that the girl's voice is changing. Some girls have a voice change, they never notice it, you never notice it, life goes on. Boys, usually you notice it, it's pretty drastic, and it's going to go in tiers as it's moving from the high to the low, and then sometimes back up to the high, and sometimes farther down to the low, low. And there's books and books and books written on the male voice change, and if you want recommendations, see me afterwards and I can point you in some directions, but there's tomes of it. But in essence, what the biggest mistake that people make is, oh, your voice is changing. Well, you know what, why don't you just take a break from singing and we'll catch it afterwards. You will not. They will never come back because you have told them that they can't sing because they are broken. And that's it for their whole life, and they'll never come back. And I've had students that I've had to spend years convincing that they can sing. I had a student made it to the 3rd round of All-State as a bass 2. But in middle school, his middle school choir director made him sing soprano because he didn't understand how to deal with his changing voice. And it took me until his senior year to put his voice back together. So the biggest thing that you can do for these kids is keep them singing. Keep them singing. Last time I gave a handout that was songs for reluctant singers. And I'll tell you what, I don't have the handout for you, but I can kind of show you some things. And for those kids that are going through the voice change, there's a ton of things that you can do to keep them involved with singing. And what it's going to be is every day they're going to wake up, their voice is going to be recalibrated, they're going to have to figure it out. It'll stay that way for 0 to 14 days, and then it'll recalibrate again sometime in that time period. And you'll do it again, 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 but eventually their voice will start to settle somewhere. You have a really great man singer on your hands. Or, you know, your beautiful, rich, low altos, right? But if you stop singing, if you get them to stop singing, then you're never going to get through that, and no one will reap the rewards from it. So give me just a second. I'm sorry that I do not have this on hand for you. Only take me a moment for it. That explains why you can't see it. I don't have it plugged in. Sorry, it's been a day. So, I always like to start my kids off with, like I said, songs that are in an essentially no-fail situation. So let's stand and we'll do some of these. And these are great things for your kids. I love this one because if you've got your like rock star kids, they're like, I know the harmony. okay? And you've got your droners, they're still contributing. And maybe that droner can only sing a B flat, well then it's one chord, you move it to wherever they can sing it. And they're singing the notes, yeah, great, okay? Another one is Happy Birthday, because what so many of these songs have in common is that the mark of achievement, the standard of excellence is so low. Anyone can reach it. How many times have you heard a truly awful happy birthday? All the time. So there's no way that your kid is going to sing happy birthday worse than what you've already heard. And probably no way that they're going to sing worse than what they've already heard it too. So I love using happy birthday. Also, Wild Thing by the Frogs. They can't sing. So, I mean, your kids don't really have to do much except sound bad, right? I tell my kids, you think they sound good? Well, to be honest, no, not at all. Cool. So let's also sound bad. That's stylistically appropriate with the song, okay? So that's another one. I like to use Wild Thing. What I like about you, again, lead singer from the Romantics, not a good singer. So that's the people that I pick. I'm like, you made money and you can't sing? You're my pick. That's who I'm going to use. Not as an example of vocal excellence, but as an example of vocal involvement, vocal participation. Sweet Caroline. Neil Diamond was actually a really good singer, but the reason the kids love Sweet Caroline, we actually put it on our last concert. The kids had a ball. My beginning modern band closed with this song. It's because the ba ba ba, so good, right? So you take your kid that's really comfortable singing, and you're like, and then you get your kids that are like, I want to sing, but I have no clue how. You're like, you're my ba-ba-bas, okay? And that's not that you're just going to have you're the kids that can't sing and the kids that can't sing, and you're going to be background. But this is a good starting point for them, because all they got to do is shout kind of, sort of in tune, right? Okay? So I use that. Satisfaction, I had two quote-unquote non-singers sing Satisfaction, and they just had a ball at it. A little teeny tiny scrawny freshman that sung it in the same octave as the Stones, and then like a 6'4", 6'5" senior singing a jolly octave, right? But they had a blast with that. So the best thing that I can say about these songs, pick something in which the standard for excellence is very low. Pick something that's very catchy. And then, if possible, the third category is pick something that they know. How many of you let your kids pick some of your concert rep, or at least your classroom rep? If you are not currently letting your students pick some of your rep, then that is a mistake. I'm not saying take every song, but I'm saying give kids that opportunity. Because even if their song didn't get picked, if they got to contribute something, and you looked at it for 10 minutes one day, that helps them feel really involved and invested. They know that, hey, they listen to me. And they don't care what music you have to show them. If you don't care what music they have to show you, right? It's a two-way street when it comes to musical respect and genre respect. So, also, I mean, they know more about certain parts of music than you do. So you're going to learn more stuff from them. You're going to learn songs that you like. You're going to learn songs that you can use. And they're going to be more apt to be able to sing these songs because they already have. They've been singing them in the car, they've been singing them in the shower, they've been singing them in the hallway, so they already know what's going on. And that is a really, really great way to kind of get them involved in that. Okay, so I want to still save some time for questions and whatnot. So look over we're going to look at the solfege chord progressions as we're going. And if you didn't get one, that's okay, I'll email them out. Okay? So how many of you have or currently still use solfege in your classroom some way, somehow? I would encourage you to, at least a few times during the year, if you have singers that you're trying to improve their technique with, teach them solfege. We teach them scales on their instruments. Why don't we do it for the voice? In fact, the voice is kind of more mysterious because we can't articulate things. So what I would do is just practice singing scales. Sing this one with me. If you don't know the solfege syllables, I got it for you. right here. Do, then re, mi, fa. So, I don't say sol, because in Texas we have a problem swallowing that L. So I say so. I'll tell you what, you guys can sit. Normally I don't let my singers sit, but we're adults and when it's late and we're tired. So all I do ask is that if you sit while you sing, you try to keep from the hips up as if you were standing. So none of this business, okay? So like that, right? So from my hips up, it's just like I'm standing. These are actually music chairs. So these are some of the few chairs that if you actually do sit with your back all the way against it, it's going to give you a decent posture depending on your spine shape. But for most of my singers, even though this is a music chair, I want them to do this just because that's going to keep them independent in their posture and they're not going to be leaning on anything else. So go ahead and sing a solfege scale. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Okay, now all that stuff that we talked about, so let's go back and do all the things that we just talked about. So you're going to need to stand tall. You're going to need to breathe deep and low. You're going to need to start with a relaxed breath. And one of the best ways to do that, if you're not stuffed up here, is just to breathe in through your nose and feel that sense of openness. If you're having a hard time finding it, then force yourself to yawn.
You'll feel a lot of openness there.
Okay.
Oh, I can induce yawns so easily. I'm very well practiced at it. Like my sopranos won't raise their soft belts. I'm like, oh, soprano, I don't know why you're not doing it. They're like, oh, okay, there we go. Okay. So sing your solfege scale. Do, re, mi. Ready to go? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, sol, la, mi, re, do. Depending on your kids, you may want to introduce it in the first 3 notes or the first 5 notes. You may introduce the ascending and then the next time the descending. But do introduce them with this because this is going to give them a system to read. And if they're bad at one key, then just find a key. You're just feel like a B flat key. It's kind of group series. Okay, so let's say this. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, sol, la, mi, re, do. Okay, you like that key? Okay, and it's kind of late. Doesn't take as much work to sing that. Okay, so think about that open space. If you can practice with that open space, you can get it a little more rough around the edges. You can get a little more rockish, a little more edgy, a little more popish. It's easier to relax their technique than it is to suddenly insert technique. So that's why a lot of singers, even if they aren't classical singers, will still warm up classically and they'll practice classically and they have a classical background. Also, once they're familiar with solfege, then you can teach them how to use it. So they can use solfege to read melodies, they can use solfege to read sheet music. How many of your kids would you say can read sheet music for an instrument? Doesn't matter which one, raise your hand. Okay, we got 4 or 5, keep them up, nice and slow, be proud. They can read sheet music. Keep them up if that instrument is the voice. That's my point, right? Okay?
Quick question.
Yes.
When because I know a bunch of elementary school students from here. When you do something like that, when you get to that point, where do the guys and the girls start on the same note?
So for elementary kids, most of those kids, unless you're working with a handful of 5th graders, are going to be what we call unchanged voices, which means that they're all going to be in the same range. So if you think of an elementary choir, a children's choir, they have 2 parts, but it's not boys and girls. It's half the kids and the other half of the kids. And then for the second song, you know, this one might be higher and this one's higher for the 3rd song. So you are kid 1 and kid 2. And let's be honest, even in middle school, you don't have a lot of voice part differentiation. There's like girl 1, girl 2, girl 3, and even a lot of sheet music for middle school choirs will be treble 1, treble 2, treble 3. They won't even call them altos and sopranos until they get to be about 8th grade, okay, 7th maybe. The key of D is that's where I started you guys. It's a really good key for a lot of elementary kids because that bottom note for an unchanged voice is right above middle C. That's about as low as most elementary kids, Chris is nodding furiously, that's about as low as most elementary kids can sing without straining. And the top D is about as high as most of those elementary kids can go without really working on breath. So that D that I started you in is great. Incidentally, once they get to high school, that's still a really good key, except the guys are going to be an octave down. So I love doing warm-ups in the key of D. I'll usually start them higher because what I referenced before, it's better to start a little bit above their mid-range and work down than it is to start at the bottom and work up. For a couple of reasons. One, it's just going to open them up more, and it's going to encourage them to use their head voices. When I warm up my singers, I try to start everyone singing in their head voice if possible, because that's going to avoid a lot of the growly, groany sort of sound. If you start at the bottom and you use an ascending warm up, this kid will sound like Tarzan once we got to the middle. Okay? So that's why you start them in the higher. And then if I do, I love warm-ups to be descending when they're in the middle and high range. Because if I start here and I do an ascending, it's going to be tense, 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 tense. But if I do descending, it's going to be, oh, I'm so glad. Oh, that's so good. Oh, I don't know if I can do one more. Okay, one more. No, that's good. Okay. So that first note, and then you can work on preparing that breath, and that first note is going to have more breath at its disposal than any of the other notes in the phrase. And that first note's going to need the most breath, and they're going to use the most breath, and by the end of that, they're going to be running low on breath, and then those notes will be easier. So if I'm using an ascending warm-up, it's always a descending pattern that shifts up, descending pattern that shifts up, descending pattern, until I'm working with experienced singers. And once I'm working with experienced singers that understand their instrument, then I'll give them different kinds of warm-ups that are more challenging. But by far, this is the easier one. If you're doing something that's descending, you can do, that works. If you're going down. Does that make sense? So descending works for both, especially use descending when you're going up. Ascending can work if you're going down. You kind of want to work opposite of the direction the voice is going so that you're not just increasing vocal tension and strain as you go. But more than anything, just look for a key that's going to fit your kids and then work from there. So much of contemporary music is built around the singer. If you talk to a band, the band will change, like a tour band, a professional band. The band will change the key depending on the weather of the city they're in, because it's going to affect how the singer sings. And the studio key is never the touring key. So if you're like, man, I can't sing like that person can sing, say, they can't either, sweetie. They did it one time in a studio, they did it over the course of an entire week, they had auto-tune, they had vocal filters, they had reverb, they had chorus, and then when they went in on tour, they dropped it like a minor third, just like everybody else does. Okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. A lot of times we're very beholden to the studio key when even the person who wrote and performed the song is not. Little side note there. Okay, so back to solfege. So if I'm using those solfege scales, then I can teach them some harmonic structure based on those solfege scales. So if you look at the solfege chord progressions, I'll pull one up here for people that do not have it. So if you think about these, as each column is a chord, or a measure of music, and they're laid out vertically. We've got do, mi, sol, and do. That's my one chord. Okay? And then my four chord, I put this in inversion just to make voice leading easier. Do could stay the same. Fa, la, do. And then we have one chord again. Do, mi, sol, do. And my five chord. Ti, re, sol, ti. If you're a fan of the 5/7, you can stick the fa in there too. That's why it's a parentheses. Okay? So right now, Chris, give us a harmony line that we're going to sing here. It doesn't have to be a beautiful melody, just a harmony line, something plain and serviceable that uses one from each column.
I don't know.
So, one note from this column,
Oh, okay.
and then that note goes to one note from this column, and then
Alright,
one note from
so-
here, and one note from here.
So, la, so, ti.
So, la, so, ti. Let's sit up straight and we'll sing that together. So, pick your octave choice. So, ready, go. So, la, so, ti. Excellent, that could work. Good. Someone else pick one. Doesn't have to be beautiful, doesn't have to be complex. In fact, simple is usually the best bet.
Mi, fa, so, so.
Mi, fa, so, so. Here we go, ready? Mi and go. Good. Now come up with your own. It could be one of the two we just sung, or it could be your own. Take a minute and come up with your own. Okay, here we go. Ready? So here's the do, here's the mi, here's the so. We don't know what you came up with, so we don't know if it's going to be right or wrong, because you came up with it. So you just sing you, we'll sing us, and we'll make harmony together. Ready? Go. Good. Do the same one again, or pick a new one. Ready? Go. Now we're going to do it 3 times in a row. And you can do the same one 3 times, you can do different ones each time. Ready? 3, 4. How many of you have ever improvised vocal harmony before? Raise your hand, you just did.
Yep.
Yeah, you just did. That was it. You just improvised a vocal harmony line. And if you can do it in like 12 seconds of preparation, given 12 class periods, certainly your children could do it too. And so this is the structure. This is why I encourage teaching them solfege, because it gives them something tangible to hold on to. Otherwise, notes are just ethereal and ephemeral, and you're like, I think that's the note. Is that the note? That's the note? Okay, that's the note. That's not the note. Which note is it? Okay? Yeah, so this gives them something concrete. Okay? Now, I'm talking about working with harmony. There's kind of 2 different directions to go. And sometimes they both work for the same song, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes you got to go song specific. One is to harmonize with the melody. Okay? Harmonizing with the melody works really well in songs that have a stable melody. And what I mean by that is that the melody does not frequently change pitches. Okay? Now, the melody could frequently change notes, do, 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 but that's the same pitch, right? So a stable melody is one that stays on the same pitch and stays within the chord for a longer period of time. So in that case, if the chords are moving quickly, or if the chords aren't really working for you, the melody works really stably, then you can harmonize the melody. So those chords are going pretty quick, so it'd be a little bit harder to harmonize those chords. But if the melody is chords, the melody is rock solid and stable. The chords are moving around a lot. So if I'm using that song to harmonize, which I have before in concert, it works great. Steal my ideas. Okay. Do mi and I'm free. So it's do do mi. Mi re do. Sing that. Do do mi. What goes with do and mi? So. Okay? So instead of do, do, mi, I'll do mi, mi, so. So, fa, mi. And walk down. Okay? So sing that with me. Mi, mi, so. Ready, go. Mi, mi, so. So, fa, mi. Okay, now raise your hand if you want to do do, do, mi. Do, 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 do. There you go. And everyone knows mi, mi, so. Ready, go. It's got some crunchy little bits working across sevenths, and then it resolves down and it's a part of the chord. Okay, I've done that particular song, that particular chorus with 4-part harmony, in which none of the kids were choir kids. They were all my modern band kids that were like, singing sounds fun. FYI, the year after that, 3 of the 4 kids joined choir because they're like, this is good. I can do that. Okay. So, so that's an example of melodic harmonization. You pick a stable melody, it sits one place for a long time, and then you can move the chords around the melody, not necessarily around the chord progression. Make sense so far? Thumbs up, good. Thumbs down, please explain again. Cool, cool. Okay, so then the second one would take this same concept, but it's moving with the chords. So what you did a second ago, go back to this key. Let's see. Actually, we'll go to here. You know this one? With you, okay? So this is one if you wanted to harmonize the verse, because this moves around a lot. Trying to harmonize that melody is going to be stress-inducing, okay? But if you think G, that's my 1, C, G, 1, D, 5, 1, 4, 1, 5. So, pick one of those notes. Do, mi, or so. Here's your do. Here's your mi. Here's your so. Any octave, that doesn't matter. And 1, 2, 3. minor, the 6 at some point in time. But it uses that basic idea as we go through the verse. Now, here's what the beautiful thing is here from the chorus. Do you remember when we used to sing? What's that? It's the same chord progression. Yay, pop songs. Okay? So you got your do mi so, your do fa la, your do mi so, and your so ti re. Any combination. Sing along. Solfege, text, whatever makes you happy. Do you remember when we used to sing? Does that make sense? I know we're kind of rushing through here, but if you teach them that basic chord progression, then any song that goes 1, 4, 1, 5, like Brown Eyed Girl, will fit with that. On the old LKR song list from the Hang, the Jam Zone doesn't do this, and it kills me. They let you search and order songs by chord progression. So if you still have that link, if not, let me know and I'll forward it to you. You can find it from the new one, but you gotta go through like 10 different little things to get there. And you can search and order songs by their chord progression. Also, I didn't list this on your thing here, but if you search hook music theory, you may have to look for a couple of pages. There's a website that does song progressions, and you tell it which chords in which order, and it tells you, not based on those specific chords, but based on their Roman numerals. You tell it the actual letters. You tell it the letters. It's thinking in Roman numerals. And it tells you which songs use that chord progression. So if your kids really master one of these and not the others, you can look for songs that match that. Or you can intentionally look for songs that don't match to try to expand it from there. So that's a little tip that you can use. So that's an example of harmonization based on the chords. And then we've got lots and lots of different examples here. I'm going to skip down to this one here at the bottom. In the corner here, we know this one pretty well. So this has 1, 5, 6, 4, right? And it just does like pop songs. There's so many of them. You know, Axis of Awesome, there's like 72 songs that follow that. So one of the ones that my kids like that we've done in a couple of things here and there. I didn't pull it up. So if you know someone like you from Adele. Oh, we're gonna do this again. You guys been having this issue where it flags like every single website in the entire world?
Oh yeah, anything guitar codes.
Well, anything. I mean, it's flagged my own website before. That's frustrating. Yeah. So, and it's not even going to give me lyrics here. So we'll look at this. There we go. So, never mind, I'll find someone like you. I wish something but the best for you. Don't forget me, I remember you said sometimes it lasts in love, sometimes it hurts instead. 5, 6, 4. That's this progression down here. So, pick one of those notes. Here's your do. Here's your mi. Here's your so. 1, 2, 3, go. That in mind. Okay, perfect, wonderful. You can sing the text, you can sing the melody, you can sing the harmony on text, you can sing the harmony on solfege. Whatever works for you. We'll do the chorus. Ready? And go. So, I know we're thinking about a lot of things right now, but I gotta be breath and posture police for a little bit. Okay. Sorry to call out a bunch of professionals here. You just looked really chill. Okay. So yeah.
Sorry, Mom.
Yeah, you just looked really, really chill right there. Okay. And if I don't police you, then you won't police your singers, and then we're gonna hurt the children. We don't want to hurt the children. So. 1, 2, 3, 4. Never mind the fun. Maybe an example if you're feeling a little bit in the uncomfortable zone. Okay, so the melody is right. So my only job is to sing a note in the chord that's not that one. So instead of never mind, I'll find someone like you, I'll pick another note. That's G, just FYI. That's my do. So maybe if I pick the so below. Never mind, I'll find someone like you. Sorry. I wish is nothing but the best for you. Don't forget me, I beg. I remember you said. Right? Okay, so that's one option. Okay. Maybe I pick that's the melodies on the do, so maybe I'll pick the mi. same thing as someone else, or it can be a different thing as someone else. Here's the cool thing about harmonizing with the chord progression. If it fits with the chord progression, it fits with everything. It fits with the melody, it fits with someone else's harmony line. It's like, oh, I don't know if my harmony's gonna go with theirs. Does it match the chords? Yeah, it'll go with theirs. And then what I tend to do is, because especially my non-singer singers, I'll have them record it. I'll play it here. We'll figure out what it's gonna be. We'll both sing it into something, and then I'll share it with them somehow, whatever limitations you have. That's what I'll do. So that way they can just listen to it over and over and over and over again. I touched on something a second ago, and I didn't talk about it at the beginning, so I just want to kind of rewind. Okay, I'm fine. Before I do that, questions on how to use this grade or how to use this sort of concept and idea?
Just for clarification, like so in a concert, for example, they learn their own harmony parts, but everyone's singing the lyrics, but in their own.
So it depends. For me, everyone's modern band is going to look different. But for me, I'll have anywhere from 1 to 8 singers in a song. And so generally, if I have more than 4, I'll work them to where there's no more than 4 parts. Even if they're singing all the correct harmony, once it gets past a certain number of parts, it just sounds cacophonous. Like if you think of a symphony, even if there's 37 different instruments, they're doubling in fifths or octaves of a similar idea, right? So you have to think that there is too much of a good thing. So let's say I have 3 singers, then I'll work with them, and either I will come up with their harmony part, they will come up with their harmony part. More often it's some sort of collaboration between us, because I like my kids to be invested. At the elementary school level, that may not be a good option or a reality for you, so you might come up with them. But I would still give them this idea of picking a note in the chord and moving up and down. Some of my modern band people that have a really good knowledge of chords, we may just jump straight to the chords. We may not do solfege. Usually I regret that decision, sometimes afterwards. So unless I have kids that just like pull harmony out of the air, you know. But some kids, they've had the experience to do that, and most kids don't. And this is gonna work with your kids that don't. So if I have, let's say, 3 singers, one of them's gonna be on the melody, 2 of them are gonna be on the harmony lines. If they're confident enough to be on different harmony lines, I'll work with them to be at different harmony lines. If they're not, I'll put them on the same harmony line, so there's reinforcement. A lot of singers just do so much better when they've got a buddy. Like, you take one singer that's a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10, and another singer that's a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10, and together they're a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. How 4 averaging with 4 makes 6, but it does. So that's something to think about, that there's strength in numbers, there's security in numbers. A lot of my people that are a guitar player and they start singing, I'll let them play guitar during the part they're not singing, because that acts like a shield, like a piece of armor. It's crazy, but it's true. Playing the guitar, and then they'll stop playing guitar and they'll sing. When they're done singing, they'll play the guitar again. It's so great. Plus, it overcomes the issue of what do I do with my hands when I'm singing. We'll get to that in just a second. Does that kind of answer? Yeah.
I think with working with my kids, I have like a kid singing the melody, and then for a harmony line, I just have them do like an ah, like ah, kind of stuff over the top, instead of actually saying the words with them. Because I think, especially with my English language learners, it became really kind of hard, especially on my 6th and 7th graders. So just doing an ah with it made some nice harmony, but was simplified everything for.
And in a lot of songs, that's actually what it is.
Yeah.
That's what the background vocals are in a lot of songs. Oohs and ahs. So, touching on the whole, but I don't sing or but I can't sing. Just to allay any confusion, there's no such thing as tone deaf in a kid that doesn't have significant hearing loss. So if your kid has significant hearing loss, they may have a hard time perceiving just sounds in general and differentiating between those. Barring that, there's no such thing as tone deaf. There's merely tone ignorant. And so, yeah, my kids, I can tell right away when I get them as 14-year-olds if they have been in some sort of music environment before. And I don't even mean a class. Did they sing in church? Did their family have music playing around at the house when they were young? I can tell immediately, because that whole different concept of how pitch connects to their body. If you don't have those kids, they can still become singers. I have 2 choir officers this year. One's a junior, one's a senior. One of them is acing AP Music Theory. And both of them, when they came to me, their parents, someone was like, my kid's tone deaf, they're joining your choir, really sorry, bye. Okay? So, but they're not. They just don't know how to connect their body to their voice. Or their voice to their ear, I guess I should say. So one of the best ways to work with those kids, your really, really challenging kids, do not go to the piano and go, it's this note, it's higher, still higher, I don't know why you're getting it. They're like, so this is going to be one of those things where you've got to find a way, bribe with candy or whatever, to get the kid one-on-one. And it will not take a long amount of time, but it will take some one-on-one time. And what you'll do is you'll have them, do I have a non-singer in here? I won't make you sing. Do I have a non-singer in here that just wants to say their name for me? That's all I'm going to have you. Can you just say your name for me?
Shaughnessy.
Shaughnessy. Can you say it really, really, really long? Take like 5 seconds to say your name. So, somewhere D, C sharp, in that range. Okay, so say your name again.
Shaughnessy.
Okay, you go Shaughnessy. Shaughnessy. Okay? It's all about starting where the kid is. You're the professional musician with the degree and experience. They are a child. Terrified of the simple act of opening their mouth, much less words coming out, much less music coming out, much less it being correct. So what I do is I pull the kid off to the side, I have them say their name, and I connect it to a pitch. Keep in mind that kids will copy timbre more than they copy pitch. So if you're demoing with a kid in your range, they may sing in your range, they may sing in their range, but they'll try to copy how the voice feels and sounds. Which is why it's almost never going to work for you to be like, hey little kid, sing this note! You know, because then they're like, that's so high, I can't sing that at all, right? Because you're having to strain to match their note, okay? So it's much better if you find a neutral instrument like a piano, and you can pick that note and then work their way up. One note at a time until they get to the point where they can't do it anymore, walk back to their comfort zone and work up again. Walk back to their comfort zone and work up again. And we're talking like, okay, or maybe something tiny, no more than 3 notes, because that'll get them little by little by little by little by little. Then usually once they're really like comfortable with, you know, a perfect fifth or so worth of space, then usually by then we'll run into a point where they can't get it anymore. As a prepubescent, as an adolescent, it's because their voice has changed and they've never accessed that upper part again. They move down. A child's unchanged voice will feel like their chest voice. So when their voice changes, their chest voice feels like their voice used to feel, but sounds totally different. Their head voice sounds like their voice used to sound, but feels totally different. So you have to sort of bridge that gap. And what I'll do is I'll get them comfortable in whichever range that they give me. If a kid comes to me and goes, hi, Mr. DeCutler, I'm like, okay, we're going to start in the head voice. Okay? But if they start low, like most kids do, then I'll work their way up. And then I'll do something non-singing to get them into the upper part. I'll go, woo, woo, you know, okay, that's the note. And then we'll string it out, do it really slowly. I won't even say the word sing. Because then they go, okay? And then I'm like, we'll do that longer. Yeah, that's the note. And then we'll work down. Woo! You know, and then, you know, work your way down from that, okay? Things like that. So that's my tip for your trouble kids. Question?
I just was thinking of my one student who, we kind of play this game. I'll say, okay, sing this note. Okay, he'll sing a third higher or lower, and I'll go to that note and he'll go up higher. and we're like playing chase, and can never get on the same. Never get on.
How old?
Young, fourth grade.
Fourth grade. Boy, girl?
Boy.
Boy. Okay. A little young for a voice change, but probably still is trying to copy your timbre or the timbre of the instrument you're using. So what I would do is get them to sing a note and then get them to move that note. And so like, you know, if they're like, you know, sing this note, they go, you go, okay, sing that note again. Sing that note again. Sing that note again.
Okay.
Sing that note again. They've locked that note in. Now go.
Okay.
Because they keep trying to adjust because they think they're wrong. So you want to really reinforce that. You're right. Sing it again, sing it again, sing it again. The more they can sing, the more they expose the voice, the more they hear it, the more they feel it. And they're matching a note. It doesn't matter what note. They're matching a note. And then work from there. A little pattern from there. Yeah.
What about, so you have 7th grade boy, he's definitely going through a voice change at that point. And it's like he has a beautiful head voice, he has a beautiful chest voice, and he cannot connect the two together.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the fancy word for that, if you want to feel educated, is passaggio. It's an Italian word. It means passageway between the registers of the voice. And books written about that one too. So the short answer is that you may not be able to bridge it because of the way his voice is changing. He may not have access to it for now. It will change. It will decrease in time, and the more times he spends singing, even if it's in the bottom and the top, the more he'll be able to bridge that gap. 3-4 years from now, his registers will actually overlap, and he'll be able to pick which register he sings a specific note in based on the context. It's beautiful, wonderful, like gears in a car. You can drive in one gear or you can drive in another, and depending on whether you're speeding up or slowing down, it might be better or worse. Right. Works the same way. So the best advice I can say is sing, sing, sing. You're not going to bridge the passaggio from the bottom. It won't happen. The only way you're going to bridge it is from the top. And so practice from the top going down. And also, especially for your boys, practicing in their falsetto is really good. It's like cross-training, but for your voice. So like the more, screwball, adolescent, middle school kind of boy, the better. Okay, and they're gonna giggle and they're gonna laugh, but that's really going to help them out. And what you'll do is you'll start in a range that is impossible for them to sing in anything except their falsetto. So this is a B4. This is the B above middle C, where I'm starting this. There's a good range. You will not have a singer that can full voice a B. You won't. Okay? Maybe when they're 20. So boy. Yeah. Okay. Girl. Yeah. You'll have altos that can belt a B and yeah. Okay. So, but go. So sing that with me and try to stay in that upper register as long as possible. For ladies, it's going to be your head voice. For guys, it's going to be your falsetto. And try to stay in the upper one as long as possible until your voice just forces you to change. Sit up straight, breathe deep, and sense? So
what was that note?
That was an F.
An F below middle C?
That was an F below middle C, F straight. Okay. So what that does right there is that's going to bridge the gap between their registers. That's going to bridge the gap between your guy's falsetto and his head voice. Young boys do not know how to access their head voice, and so that's the best warm-up I have for teaching them, first of all, that it's a thing. Second of all, how to access it. Again, if they try to go from the bottom up, it's going to be tension, 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 and then crack and pop up to the top. So the bottom is going to let them descend really lightly. Also, for your girls, if you have shouty girls, that's a really good exercise. And if they try to shout that B, take them up to an F, right? Take them up so high that they can't shout it. And then walk it down. And once they switch to their chest voice too early, go, nope, back up top, and do it again. I know middle school directors that with their boys choirs, every day, all year long, that's the first warm-up they do. They change some of the other ones, but that one stays the same. because of that reason. Another thing that's just a general vocal tip, a lot of singers will not use enough air. And if you're not sure if they're using enough air or not, here's the instant test. Have them sing whatever they're singing on a lip trill. And the same amount of air it takes to sustain a lip trill is the same amount of air it takes for your default singing. So if they can't, if they're going, then you know it's not enough air. So if I'm doing, etc. Right? You have them lip trill it, and then immediately have them sing it again. Because they're going to engage more air when they're doing the lip trill, and then they're going to go back to singing it. Also, I feel like this is a grab bag of tips, but I want to try to just give you as much as possible. Let's say you have those non-matcher kids. Something that has worked wonders for me, and I never would have thought it, it was just divine providence that I stumbled across it, is that we would sing like a 4-measure passage, and we would all sing it together. And then I would go down and have like 2 guys sing 1 measure at a time. So like, you know, if like, we'll use someone like you, because that's what we're just singing. So if I'm doing, never mind, I'll find, then someone else comes in, someone like you, someone else, I wish nothing but the best. Okay, so we're gonna do that. So you're gonna be, you're a pair, and we'll do you 3, and then we'll do you 2, and then we'll do you 3, and then we'll do you 2, and then you 2. We'll just keep going through. Do you want me to put this back on? Yes, please. Okay, we're just going to do the chorus.
Do we
And it's,
sustain or no after?
once I say switch, it's the next group.
Okay.
I'll tell you like right when it happens. So you got to be listening for your part when it comes. Ready? Never mind, and never mind, I'll find someone like you. Switch. 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 Switching back and forth, what it's doing without the kids realizing that it's forcing them to do what's called audiation. Audiation is when you internalize music in your head, right? And everyone can audiate. Just, you know, think of your favorite song. There, you just audiated right there, okay? So all you're doing is purposeful internalizing of music. And so if I have one group singing and the next group doesn't know when they're coming in, they don't want to fail, they don't want to screw it up, they're going to be listening, they're going to be paying attention, and in their head they're singing along. And then you're like, switch, you, switch, you. And I have, quote unquote, cured kids of the non-matching from that one exercise.
It gets them to listen.
And that's the thing. It's not that they can't match pitch, it's that there's a disconnect. So all you need to do is try to find what the reconnect is. The kid that's like, they aren't connecting the muscles to actually produce the correct pitch. The kids that are constantly chasing around the pitch don't know where the ear and the voice connect to each other. The kids that always come in on the right note, on the wrong note, and then trickle into the right note, they're the ones that aren't audiating before they sing. So depending on the problem, you might use a different exercise to solve it, but the root is still the same basic idea of a disconnect between their mind, their ear, and their voice. How are we doing so far?
Cowboy game.
Cowboy game? Are we done at 7 or 7:30? 7:30. Okay.
It's a camera break.
We'll wrap up earlier than that. I gave you a couple just of different ideas. Brown Eyed Girl uses the 1-4-1-5. Amazing Grace uses that one. The 1-4-5 is Carry On by Fawn or Blowing in the Wind by Bob Dylan. The 1-5-6-4 is Anything, Axis of Awesome. We did Someone Like You, which is a really good belty song. If you want a contemporary song that works on the girl's head voice, believe it or not, Paparazzi by Lady Gaga has the chorus in the head voice, and she sings in her head voice, which is not too often to find a pop alto singing in her head voice, and the first in her chest voice. So it's actually a really good song that uses this pattern and this progression that they know, that probably they like, that teaches the register difference. It also has some really great opportunities for vocal harmony in the chorus. So that's a cool one to try out. We need to edit some of the lyrics or pick an excerpt of the song, depending on your kids. The other thing that I stumbled across, and this isn't necessarily vocal specific, but I found it very beneficially vocally, is that early on in the year, I don't bother with teaching them entire songs. I pick the part of the song that teaches the thing that I want to teach, and I teach them that. And I put it on a PowerPoint, so I can be up here with my guitar and go slap new song, or new page of the same song. And that's really helped me out. And that way I can really focus on just the songs that I want to teach the skills. And then, once we're ready to do full-length songs, maybe it'll be one of those, or maybe it'll be something different. That's especially good for your vocalists, because most of these songs aren't going to be great for them for the entire song. Or if you find one that's great for the entire song, maybe the chords are too hard for your instrumentalist to handle, or the range is bad, or the tempo is bad. So picking just an excerpt can really free you of that limitation. And then sometimes we'll perform an excerpt. Like there's some songs, if it's a punk song, man, I don't understand what it is with punk songs, but the last like 45 seconds is just, what happened? What's going on there? So a lot of times we're like, yeah, cut, excerpt. There we go, moving on. Other thoughts as far as harmony, most of these songs you can find sheet music for very cheap online. So if you're having a hard time picking the melody out by ear, spend a couple bucks, buy some sheet music online, and then that way you can figure it out and get the chords, like the actual chords, like by someone who knows music and not an 11-year-old on Ultimate Tab. Nothing against 11-year-olds on Ultimate Tab. Sometimes their tabs are really nice. Most of the time they're not. What I tell my kids is anything that you find online, expect that there to be at least one glaring error, because it's free. Okay, if you want it to be right, you gotta pay money, and even then, it may not be. But buy some sheet music, that'll help you out with that. Another that most people forget is that every karaoke track for every song pretty much in the world is on YouTube for free. And what do karaoke tracks have? Background vocals. So if your kids want a learning track for the background vocals of a song, have them listen to the karaoke track. There's no lead part, they can just follow along with background vocals. Great little cheat there. Okay. I'm going to give some quick notes on stage presence, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions afterwards. Stage presence. This is a sticky one, and this is, I think, of all the things that we're talking about today, this is probably the hardest to teach, because there isn't a that's right, that's wrong when it comes to stage presence. One thing that I encourage that's going to start things off really well, if the singer is thinking about the song, that's going to solve a ton of the problems. So what I do with my singers, if I notice that they don't have really strong stage presence for something, I'll ask them to tell me the story of the song. And it needs to last at least 30 seconds. Like, they need to be able to give me, well, there's this girl, and she's going through a really rough time. She's away from her family, she's on her own, she doesn't know how to pay her bills, so she gets in with the wrong crowd. It needs to be a narrative. If it's not that detailed for them, it's not going to be that detailed for the audience, because the audience is going to get 1/10 of whatever detail that the singer has in their head. So a lot of times, write it out. Make them write it out. Make them tell you the story. And it doesn't have to be the story that the songwriter had in mind when they wrote the song. It's art, it's subjective, it's open to interpretation, but it needs to be a story that works with your vision of the song, so help guide that. Once they have a story in mind, then you work on them telling the story. So what I would have them do is recite the text of the song like it's a monologue and tell me the story. First, they tell me the story in their own words. Then they tell me the story in the song's words, and then they sing the song. That helps keep the trappings of the song, the pitch and the chorus and the breath support and the tuning away until they can really get the communication down. Once they do that and they're singing, and I feel like vocally and facially they're telling a great story, then I'll move on to other stuff. But if you move on to the other stuff before they can get that far, you probably won't ever pick it up. You probably won't ever get it. So start with that. That's something they can do really early on before they're memorized with the song, when they're still kind of learning it, they can tell you about the story. Now, so when you're on stage, you can't be a statue, okay? If it's a ballad, I encourage them to have their feet planted and do most of it waist up. Because the more movement you have on a ballad, the more distracting it's going to be from just the intimate nature of the song. So think about, telling the story with very little. And a lot of times singers will hold on to the mic stand, but if they're doing this for too long, I'm going to make them move. So this is okay, but then a hand needs to come up and make some sort of gesture. And then another one, right? Reaching out, something like that. So keep that in mind. And one thing that you can do is think about scenes in your song. So in this scene, you're talking about this. The emotion is this. In this scene of the song, you're talking about that. The emotion is that. And what they can do, a really quick and easy way, is scene 1, scene 2, scene 3. And so they're singing, never mind, I'll find someone like you. I wish nothing but the best for you. Don't forget me. Right? 3 different ideas, and that's a little compressed, right? But you could stretch that out and have one verse or one stanza be a scene. You could have a whole chorus be a scene, or you could do line by line. But the main thing is that they're doing some sort of physical shift. That was teeny tiny, but it was purposeful. It doesn't have to be big. It has to be thoughtful and purposeful. And so when you're thinking about that, and what's really easy for the kids is just pick points. And that's going to help them, A, sing toward the audience, connect with the audience, connect with different parts of the audience, not look at their shoes, not stare at the microphone, not look up at the sky, right? It's giving them purpose when they're going through that. If it's an up-tempo song, encourage them to be the most excited person in the room about their song. Because it's probably impossible for the audience to have a bigger emotional reaction to a song than the singer. So the singer, and I talk with my advanced kids all the time about this, you are the emotional captain of this ship. You are driving the emotions of this. The band will follow you because they're good and they're paying attention, but you have to drive. And so if you're not driving anywhere, we're not going anywhere. So that's where it goes back to the narrative and thinking about that sort of energy. So for up-tempo, bouncing with the beat, choreography, like I have had singers that have choreographed their songs before to incredible effect. On this verse, I'm going to walk, 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 and gesture. And then I'm going to look up and toss my hair back and walk, 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 and look back and sing. Okay? And like the band's working out like intricate solos, and my singer is sitting there going, here, and then flip back and forth, and then here, and then walk forward and point, right? And like walking through like dance steps, and like 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? And there's nothing wrong with that at all. The less experienced the kid, the more guidelines and structure they're going to have. I know Beth was talking about like when we get to this part, your guitars go up and then down and then up and then down. I want up, down, right? And it's like that's what it has to be. And so they do it and people love it, right? I was just talking with one of my lead guitarists, because this goes beyond singers. I was like, when you got to the solo, it was gorgeous. It seemed way too easy. I need to feel like you're powering the distortion from your amp with the blood of your fingers. You need to be giving some life into this solo because it's beautiful, but it's boring because you look like this is something you could do in your sleep, because probably could, right? And so your singer needs to be kind of the same mindset that like you need to be moving the emotion forward. That won't happen if they don't know what the emotion is. So upbeat songs, ditch the mic stand. Right? They need to be up and moving. If you don't have a cordless mic, that's fine. Just teach your singer to walk around the chords, and that's really easy.
You can use it as a prop.
Well, that like your first move, if you're right-handed and you're walking, your first move is always going to be stage left. And when you walk to stage right, it's going to be this, right? So you're always got the chord on your right side, and you can even use your elbow to keep it out of your way if you're worried about that. So I like gesturing to the audience because it invites them in, right? So, you know, whatever gestures, this says something. And this is very different than this, which is very different than this, which is very different than this. My body was the same, my arm was the same, I changed 4 inches of my hand, and it was 4 different emotions. Just think if I incorporate the rest of my body, right? So even if that's all of my vocabulary I'm working with, this, 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 and this, okay? And then my vocabulary for this could be this, 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 and this. Well, now I have this, I have this, I have this, and I have this. That's 4 different things too. And again, it's just a simple gesture. But you have to kind of put some thought into it because it's not going to be intuitive for these kids right off the bat, or maybe ever, right? That's why these music videos hire professional choreographers. That's why bands on tour hire professional choreographers. They don't make this stuff up on the spot. There's someone with experience that says, now you're going to walk here 4 steps, stop here, turn left, walk here, 5 steps, stop here, look back, come to the audience, turn around, get down on one knee, gesture to the person on the first row, high five, high five, high five, stand up, turn around, do it all over again. Okay? So you may have to do that with your singers too. Encourage them to use their stage as much as possible. I know with us, we're on a teeny tiny cramped stage, so that's really, really hard. But use as much of the space you have. You can be super expressive if you have 2 square feet. And you can be super inexpressive if you use 20 square feet. So just kind of think about using that space. If you want to really practice stage presence without worrying about layering on everything else, have a lip sync battle. Have the kids pick a song, do a lip sync battle, you can't sing, and then we'll have a prize for the person with the best energy, expression, and stage presence, right? It's nothing to do with vocals, it's everything to do with personality. So, got about 5 minutes for questions. Yes?
What, just if you had to pick your, I don't know, I guess for me, my question is like, what is your best vocal care outside of singing? Like, we talked about how to take care of your voice when you're singing, but just other than like drink lots of water.
Okay, vocal health, yeah, especially now that we're in like gross allergy season. So, in no particular order, the short list is rest. It's the only time you're guaranteed not to use your voice. Treat your symptoms as best you can. So if you're sick, go to the doctor. If you have allergies, take allergy medicine. Asterisk, a lot of antihistamines will dehydrate you. The newer generation of antihistamines, so Allegra, Claritin, Zyrtec, are less likely to dehydrate you compared to things like Benadryl, clotrimazole, stuff like that. But they're still going to dehydrate you because one of the ways that they reduce your histamine reaction is by decreasing the moisture in your sinuses. So there's less things to activate the pollen spores. Pollen spores, mold spores activate with moisture. Your body decreases that reaction by dehydrating you, less reaction. But it means you're dehydrated. The problem with dehydration is that your vocal cords will feel it first. They're soft tissue, they've got a mucosal membrane on top of them that requires moisture in order to stay the way it is. When you drink water, it does not go to your vocal cords. This is a big mistake a lot of people make. In your voice, in your throat, there's your esophagus, which goes to your stomach, your trachea, which goes to your lungs, and there's a valve on the top called your epiglottis, and it blocks water from getting to your lungs. Your vocal cords are down here, your epiglottis is up here. So in order to get water to your vocal cords, you have to drink it 2 hours prior to when you want it there, because it's got to work through your entire bloodstream before it gets to your voice. So it's the first place to feel dehydration and one of the last places to get hydration when you have it. By drinking water, all you're doing is giving yourself moisture later on and helping to lubricate a dry mouth. You're not actually giving water to your vocal cords. So rest, hydration, treat your symptoms. Avoid areas in which you'll cause yourself vocal harm. So this would be areas that are especially loud, where you're going to raise your voice without realizing it. These are going to be areas where there's a lot of smoke, a lot of wind blowing on you, because that's going to dry you out. Singers should sleep with, if they're really dealing with troubles, sleep without a fan but with a humidifier, because that's going to help them out. Unless they're already dealing with excess moisture here, in which no humidifier, right? Because that's just going to make the problem worse. My favorite medicine to treat congestion is Mucinex, because it has something called guaifenesin. And guaifenesin is an expectorant. It's going to use the moisture in your body. So when you take Mucinex, you take it with water, because whatever you take it with, it's using that water. It's going to use that water to thin the mucus and let it drain out, which is great. Mucinex DM comes with a cough suppressant, so that's really good too, because coughing is awful for you. Clearing your throat is awful for you. Please avoid doing it at all costs, and tell your kids to avoid doing it at all costs too. It's better to drink water, clear your throat. If you really feel like something's on your vocal cords, try singing, and vibrating your vocal cords will clear them off. If that still doesn't work, press your tongue against your hard palate as hard as you can and swallow. And what it does is it very gently brings your vocal cords together and presses them, and it can clear some of the stuff that's off of them if there's excessive mucus. Obviously, alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, excessive caffeine, excessive dairy. These are all things that are going to put your voice at a disadvantage, because they either dehydrate you or increase mucus production. So, like, the worst thing for your singer to have before they sing, aside from a cigarette, would be like a double shot frappuccino or something like that, because it's got dairy, caffeine, chocolate, it's cold, right? Things like that. But more than anything, if they take care of themselves physically, they're going to take care of themselves vocally. Now, a note to you guys. The biggest problem we have is not our vocal technique when we're singing, but our vocal technique when we're speaking. Because we shout over students all day long. So I've gotten to where I as often as humanly possible, do not speak to my modern band class unless it's through a microphone. Because you're just going to kill yourself if you don't. There's some times when I'm walking around, I'm like, ee, okay? But if I'm going to tell them something, if I'm going to be singing along with them, it's going to be at a microphone. I encourage you to do the same. Any other questions?
I've got one.
Yeah.
Can you send everyone that backdoor link you talked about? I thought it was taken down.
Oh, yeah. Wait, if I forget, let me remind you.
And then I'm sending a piece of paper around now, if you would write, you'll see everything on it, and we'll have it.
Especially the emails.
Yeah, especially your email.
Yeah, I'm DeCutler at DallasISD.org. If you need anything from me, email me, and I'll be happy to pass it along, any of the resources that I have, and the stuff that we talked about today. I've recorded this session, and so I can share this with you at some point in time too. All right, thanks guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Of course, I'm just going to turn this video off.